Welcome to the broadcast, my dears. Do take a throne. And before anyone goes berserk at the title of this video, I have one thing to say. Ask a silly question, get a silly answer. Enough said, almost, because I will address that issue of Lady Louise later in the broadcast. I have seen most of Prince Harry's interview on ABC, was it? Good Morning America. Actually, when I went for a walk earlier this morning, I was listening to the live feed, and I've got to tell you, I've never listened to a ABC live feed before, and I sympathise with America. If that is, as it tells me, the most viewed streaming broadcast of news in the country, I totally sympathise with you, my dear. I'm sure there are much better news channels out there for you, but it was 98% adverts and indents and perhaps 2% news, if you could call it news, and it was the same story returning every 5 minutes. Absolutely unbelievable. The inferior quality of it. Dreadful. And I'm not saying that here in the kingdom we possibly might have the same sort of things. Somewhere you might be able to find, but it made me so grateful for the BBC licence paying fee, which I certainly have begrudged over the past few years because of all the wokery that's going on there. But at least with the BBC you get fantastic quality, world-beating quality, with no adverts at all, not one single commercial on that enterprise, and even the other channels are a lot better. So I'm not saying this to denigrate America before everyone gets exercise, but just simply that sort of populist version of the news, and I'm sure it applies to very many channels, but it really stultified me. Trash. In nice news, oh, and I should say, we'll be covering that interview probably in the next broadcast. I'm not doing it today. I've got other things to talk about. The King was seen driving near Sandringham as he continues his treatment, and he was behind the wheel of an Audi SUV in beige coat and a crisp white shirt. Also, Princess Eugenie popped up. Her Royal Highness shared Valentine's tidings and 2 new photographs, lounging al fresco. It's not especially royal to do this, by the way, but she's not a working royal, so I've got to let her get on with it. That's how she wants to progress. One T-shirt was adorned with Jackie's image, and she wore heart-shaped glasses. Ooh, Lolita. They're spicy too, some, aren't they? That Jackie is handsome, you know. Somebody not quite so appealing as Jackie Brooksbank is Henry Wales, Henry Sussex, Henry Plonker, and they were seen for a romantic Valentine's dinner. Well, who can begrudge them that? This is up in Whistler, isn't it? It was at the, the Il Caminetto. Oh, just the one Caminetto. Give it to me. Oh, so Italian in their romance. Wonderful. They were seen gobbling away at that shack, and then they trudged through snow. Meghan was carrying out her Red Riding Hood fantasy. Same baggy old rags we've seen her in before, isn't it, loves? Same baggy old rewear, and she clutched a red Valentino bag. I will tell you, I am rather envious of the log cabin fantasy going on. I do find that very romantic, the idea of somewhere in America or Canada, you know, lakes, snow, log cabin by the hearth. That's one that I've yet to live out, that fantasy. But, you know, I will arrive there, so. Any offers? Any old, what is it they're called? Lumberjacks of the forest that wish to entertain River by the Hearth. Send in your videos and I'll peruse, see what's going. Oh dear, I'm digressing again, aren't I? Too fruity. Out on the piste. Were they pissed? I don't know. But they're out on the piste, and now, depending on who you believe, they received cheers or boos or a mixture of both, and God Save the King. They were serenaded with God Save the King, as the Mail put it. I saw some people online getting very exercised about this. They're not being serenaded at all. What are the Mail talking about? It is the British sense of humour. I do it here and there, and people mistake it for me giving them compliments. And sometimes I mean real compliments, but sometimes it's sarcasm, my dear. Sometimes it is the sarcasm. And the British press have that sarcasm sometimes. Double entendre, hidden meanings, a bit of shadow boxing, my dear. And the Daily Mail do that a lot because, as you might know, they're not exactly great fans of Harry and Meghan. So if it looks as if they're pitching a compliment, try scratching your head a bit harder and think, what are they really saying here? She looked rather radiant in white. Of course, it's easier to look radiant when you're on the slopes and you're among the snow. It's wonderful for lighting, absolutely wonderful. And she did look really wonderful in a lot of the photographs. Of course, she was in full glam. She was in full glam, although very subtly applied, wonderfully, expertly applied. But who really goes around, you know, what woman of her vintage goes around wearing brown eyeshadow during the day? And please forgive me if you do, my dear, I'm all for it. Plaster yourself if you want to, but not many of my associates would during the day. Brown eyeshadow. However expertly and deftly applied it was, with the blush of the cheeks. It was done well. It was done well. Hair, that tumultuous rapture of glossiness. Calvin Klein maxi she wore, a puffer in the shade of barley. A cashmere sweater, always nice. Skinny jeans. Celine sunglasses. She seems to do day wear better than she does the evening wear, doesn't she? This is where she falls flat in her face and always looks like a pancake. But day wear, she does get better for my money. But I like the skinny jeans cashmere jumper look. That's me all over, my lover. A sorrel Joan of Arctic boots. The boots were quite cool. And the beanie was Burberry for pom-pom. No, Burberry fur with pom-pom. Harry indulged in some adaptive sit skiing. That looks a lot of fun, doesn't it? He was in his element there. And they joined a winter training camp. And he indulged in skeleton bob sledding at speeds of up to 99 kilometres per hour. Don't bump into your wife, my dear. Do watch out. She'll go down like a skittle, my love, because she looks like one. And of course, they were followed by a camera crew, who knows what for, apart from the Good Morning America interview. Certainly that's part of it. But what else? What else are they catching it all for? On the bobsled track, Meghan was trussed up in a quilted jacket by Hermes and Valerie jeans by La Ligne and a pair of Canic Sienna boots. It's galling to see them parading around Canada as if they are working on behalf of the Crown, or as if they themselves are the Crown and the rest of the royal family are just a sideshow for them. Yes, it's galling. But one thing I will say about all the exposure that they have and the press attention and the headlines that they make every time they open their mouths and come to the world's attention, one thing I will say is that it does, as much as it damaged the reputation of the monarchy, especially initially, and throughout the Commonwealth, and there are still repercussions, it has also had a bolstering influence. It has also piqued the interest of those who didn't have an interest in royalty at all. There are hundreds of thousands who watch this broadcast and many others, and many other portals and channels, hundreds of thousands who had no idea what Sophie Edinburgh did. That Anne was called the Princess Royal. These little bits and bobs that many of you tell me you didn't know, but you had a passing knowledge, they've been brought to the world because of their aspersions, and people have become fond of them. I was looking at videos on that unofficial royal family channel the other day that pops up with candid footage called the Royal Family Channel. It's not official at all, but they have lots of footage. And videos capturing Camilla, for example, didn't used to be big players. People would skip over them. Who cares about Camilla? This, that thing. Now she gets decently healthy views for very mundane engagements, and some of them really, really fly. That didn't happen. That didn't happen quite a short time ago. It's given people more breadth of knowledge and exposed the good deeds of the family on a much larger scale, without the royal family even playing into it or trying to. So that is a relief to me and is something to soothe us, if you will, my dear, to soothe us when we see these galling incidents of them prancing around. You know, they're a blip in time. They're a blip in time, as we all are, but their reign of Montecito, if you can call it such, is already over in many ways. But they will cling to the power that they have with any royal association, as we've seen with their new rebrand. They're desperate to cling on to the visual identity of the coat of arms and the name of Sussex, which we'll discuss in a moment. Desperate to cling on to that. And the Invictus Games is something that gives a sense of credence, a sense of respectability, a royal association and patronage. And so it's very important to them to cling on to that huge event, because it does foster very much a large amount of goodwill towards them by osmosis. And I don't want to be cynical enough to say they are using that event for their own profit, because I do believe that Harry at least has a genuine love for the people involved in the Invictus Games, but it's certainly not something that I see as entirely altruistic. But on the subject of the Sussex surname, which we discussed previously, we hear tell now that the children, Prince Archie and are to be going under Archie Sussex and Lilibet Sussex rather than Mountbatten Windsor. This is the talk. Now, up to the point that the royal website was altered to reflect the change in sovereign, they were listed, Archie and Lilibet were listed as Mountbatten Windsors. Now, at place 6 and place 7, they are listed as Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex. Now, this does not mean it is their surname. As far as my understanding goes, their surname, as mentioned on Lilibet's certificate, is Mountbatten Windsor. The only other Mountbatten Windsor, incidentally, on the line of succession, shown up to the number 24, is Louise, our dear Lady Lou. She is down as the Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor, and I've heard various quarters saying that she might only use Windsor, but on the official website she is listed as the Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor. However, as you might know, Harry hasn't historically used Mountbatten Windsor his entire life. He was schooled as Harry Wales, and William was William Wales, and that's how they went, by their father's title as Prince of Wales as he was. So this does have form. It doesn't mean that it is their official surname. So it's rather peculiar that, as well as their rebrand, they might have rebranded their children in that image, if you will. Although, layer upon layer, because we need to take these things into consideration, we should also remember that there are others in the royal family and extended members of the royal family that have done the same with their title slash surname, if you will. For example, Tony Snowdon, husband of the late Princess Margaret Rose. The Earl of Snowdon went by Tony Snowdon professionally and personally. And if you're wondering, by the way, if little Jimmy 7 is down as a Mountbatten Windsor as well, like Lady Lou, no, he is not. He is on the line of succession, listed at number 15 as Earl of Wessex. Not the Earl of Wessex. He is James, Earl of Wessex, but listed as Earl of Wessex, although he'll always be little Jimmy 7 to me. The royal family name of Windsor was confirmed by Queen Elizabeth II following her accession in 1952, and in 1960 it was her and the late Duke who elected for their descendants to carry the name Mountbatten Windsor, and if their children were required to declare a surname, it would be Mountbatten Windsor, which first appeared in an official document in 1973. It was actually upon the marriage of Anne and Captain Mark Phillips. The other point that I was going to make is that quite obviously they've been reined in rather successfully by the likes of Ari Emanuel and WME, and perhaps taking some advice to keep stum, and the whispers regarding members of the royal family is that they are remaining silent about the Sussex branding and the Sussex dukedom for fear of looking vindictive. And this has always been the thing, hasn't it? Their hands are tied, said one source. Well, it should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago, because this is the trouble. If you are lenient, then you will find yourself in a sticky situation. Even if it's not Charles, it could be William or George if the monarchy exists in those years, because it's a hereditary dukedom that breeds and breeds and breeds and goes on ad infinitum, and could be commercialised for millennia. I noticed an article by Judith Woods pop up, and I did wonder if she's been watching the broadcast, because she used the word performative. And eagle-eared viewers will know that that's exactly the word I introduced regarding those two last week on 2 occasions. Performative, performative, performative. Well, Judy Woods agrees, and she points to what I call the Darby and Joan nature of the Harkles, which is what they like to present to the world. Oh, they're a real Darby and Joan type, my dear. And she says, does anybody have a pair of bolt cutters or maybe a water cannon? Because frankly, I think that's the only way we can stop Harry and Meghan from holding hands. And she's got a point, hasn't she, my dears? Like so many other things about them, it is fingernails down the blackboard grating, annoying, and so goddamn performative. And a representative for the Harkles, for the office of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, told the Mirror here in the kingdom, told them, we've heard time and time again that certain opportunities are make or break for the couple. They're still here. They're still working and pursuing what they believe in, despite constantly being challenged and criticised. This couple will not be broken. You won't break my soul. I guess she's been listening to Beyonce and that track, my dear. I don't want to break them. I don't want to break them down. I don't have that ambition. Maybe the press do. I don't want to break them, but what I do want to break is their spell over those who might have been convinced that this nation is racist, that this royal family is racist, and all that kind of muckiness. And I make no apologies for that whatsoever. It's not about breaking them. In my case, it is about breaking that spell, that voodoo that they cast among some generations, some quarters, and some people. We will make a robust defence of our monarchy and our country, those of us who care about it, my dear. So don't twist it. Back in Whistler at the Mount Currie Community Centre, the Sussexes were seen in the traditional territory of the Lilwat Nation. That's the Lilwat Nation, not the Lilibet Nation, Meghan. She doesn't have a territory named after her yet. The Lilwat Nation as part of their 3-day trip. Chief Dean Nelson joined students, wheelchair basketballers, with other officials from the government and Invictus community and partners. They were given a traditional welcome for some reason and laden with gifts. What a waste. Now we are going to turn to the subject of Lady Louise becoming the Duchess of Sussex. And I will say before I address this, that this is a fruity channel, and I like to roast people. My audience enjoy me giving a bit of a roast, dragging people, and sometimes having a bit of a hissy fit and giving a lecture. So for those of you who are humorless and joyless, and I'm going to take this personally and say, River's chastising the viewers, this, that and the third. Yes, I do, and yes, I am. And if you don't like it, fuck off out of here. Go on, fuck right off. I don't care who unsubscribes. I want you to unsubscribe. If you're offended, if you're easily triggered, if you're a stupid twat, get lost, get out of here. The numbers can plummet all the way down to the ground for all I care. I want fruity, saucy people here who can have a poke at themselves as well as other people. Okay? So now that I've got that off my chest, and hopefully those of you who are remaining can understand that this is a bit of theatrics. I'm not really having an apoplexy. I'm not really worrying myself about it and crying myself to sleep. I'm having fun. Get it? Fun. Get it? Got it? Good. Now I will progress. I had at least 100 comments possibly 200 comments pop up. And this is so disappointing to me and disheartening. Over what I discovered was a YouTube channel, I think one in particular. I didn't want to look into it too much, to be honest, but their videos are getting views in the hundreds of thousands. 179,000 views this particular video got, about the King awarding the Sussex title to Lady Louise as rightful Duchess of the Kingdom. And then under this video there were 400, 500 comments from seemingly rational people sharing their congratulations to Lady Louise, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Now, I understand there are vulnerable people out there. There are people on medication. There are people with all kinds of problems. Those kinds of people get a pass, in a way. And if you're one of those people, you get a pass, in a way, I suppose. But there's got to be, out of all those hundreds of thousands, a few regular people without those conditions who do not have their heads screwed on, who don't, or certainly don't in every circumstance. You've got to understand, my dears, these type of videos should be fairly obvious to you. Now, you don't have to be especially savvy to understand what's real and what's not. Perhaps that's unfair. They're becoming highly sophisticated. They are able to deep fake people. But at this moment in time on YouTube, it's very easy to see the channels that are AI. They're using artificial intelligence. They don't usually have an actual human fronting the channel like me. It's usually like a very smooth, sugary voice, which is actually computerized, which you don't realize. It could be a man's or a male voice or a female voice. It's usually people from other countries, such as India, for example. I don't mean to pick on India, but often it's India or other countries that are not part of the Anglosphere that use computerized voices to present. They come up with their scripts. And I found out from these channels, I found out because people were telling me in the comments section, and it was absolutely true, that some of these channels had taken, for example, my broadcast and the broadcast of other YouTubers as well. But on this occasion, it was my broadcast. They had taken my broadcast, ran my script, if you will, although I don't have a script, but my words, ran the words of it through whichever artificial intelligence machine they use, and it had rejigged my words and rehashed it into a different broadcast that was sort of gobbledygook. So you didn't hear my voice, you heard a computer voice based on my synopsis, my script, if you will, with a completely different video. That's what they do, and that's probably what they did with this Lady Lou thing. And you put it in the machine and 2 and 2 comes out making 682. It's all over the place. But for some people, viewers in their millions are listening to these trash channels and taking what they say as word, as taking it as true. It's just so dismaying, my dear. You've got to be more savvy than this. I do understand that there are people out there who are unfamiliar with the capabilities of technology, but many, many people should just know better. I had comments from a couple or more viewers who watch this channel for a long time and have always seemed extremely savvy, asking me or stating it as fact that Lady Lou was now crowned the Duchess of Sussex, and I had to scratch my head, because it's not just harmless. These videos are watched by hundreds of thousands and millions from other channels. This is the thing. And when I speak about the Aspen Institute, which Harry and Meghan are cozying up to, of course, we're all suspicious because we don't want free speech shut down. We don't want channels shut down that disagree with them, or people getting too nanny state about things. But when you see lots of these AI channels popping up and millions of people falling for them, well, if that's what the Aspen Institute are also going to be against, then they've got a point there. They've certainly got a point, and it doesn't reflect well on the rest of the community. But for those 100 or 200 people that asked me about it, I'll just read out a couple of examples. I won't name the names. I don't mean to shame anyone especially, but one said, King Charles formally announced that Lady Louise would be the new Duchess of Sussex. If I'm wrong, let me know. You're wrong. I've been so happy for Duchess Louise. Another one, Sussex is not their family name. It is a title bestowed upon them. Well, that's a grey area, my dear, but I see your point. I have heard that on coming of age, Lady Louise will be given the title of Duchess of Sussex. What a breath of fresh air for the people of Sussex. They will be ecstatic. I mean, there's comedy to it. There's comedy to it. If some of you meant it in fun, that's fair enough. But otherwise, I just despair. I despair. It makes me think of those, I don't want to disparage everyone and call you a bunch of suckers, but some of you are. And you've got to just, get with it. Get with it. Don't be a sucker. Don't fall for romance scams online and online frauds. And we're told not to shame people that fall for these kind of things. And not everybody deserves to be shamed for these kinds of things. It's very easy to do these days, but some people do. Some people are just plain stupid, and they gotta start looking out for themselves. It was the same during that era, which has fizzled out a bit now, but on my comment section and the comment section of many, many other channels, this happened all over YouTube, and it still does occasionally. People posing either as me in the comment section or as men in the army saying, "And how are you today? And how are you today?" to all the ladies in the comment section. Would you like to talk on WhatsApp? And people that I had warned on this channel before about those bot channels, if you will, or scam channels, which are usually based in Nigeria, these kind of scams come from, or countries that confused with disinformation. Even though I was warning people on the channel, I was seeing women still responding. "Hi, I'm fine, how are you? Would you like to talk offline?" "Yes, I would love to. Where are you?" But I had to say, ladies, have your wits about you. Don't trust people online. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to stories about the royal family and Lady Louise. It also applies equally to all the channels of similar ilk that popped up about Harry and Meghan. I base my criticism about them on fact, and sometimes I deliver the odd compliment to them. But I base it on the fact that I understand it. But there was a time when videos were popping up all over the place. "Oh, Lilibet's got Down syndrome." Well, firstly, any family that has a child with Down syndrome knows that it's nothing but a blessing, and that they are pure love and operate on an intelligence higher than I or most of you have, my dear. So that's the first thing to say about that. Second one to say about that, it is sick to invent and fabricate lies such as that for people's entertainment and to get views. And thirdly, it's even worse to see that they were being watched in their hundreds of thousands. People were coming back to me to ask me if it was true, and this kind of thing. It's sick. And a lot of the misinformation and lies that have sprung up about the conspiracy theories about Harry and Meghan boil down to originating on channels like that. So absolutely, I can see why they would be upset about that as well. And I'm not putting those kind of bot channels on the same shelf as other YouTube channels that are just sharing an opinion. If they're not breaking the rules, then that's all very good and valid. I'm just trying to use this snippet, this moment, for whoever's watching it, and I'm doing it passionately, and I'm doing it intentionally, strictly. I'm trying to impart a little firm but fair wisdom upon anybody out there who is being a numbskull and for some reason watching these channels and taking them seriously when they should have more sense. Come on. You need a bit of tough love, I'm afraid, my dear. Get with the program. Ask yourself why you are giving these sort of channels any oxygen whatsoever. And if you really want that sort of platform to be part of the online world, because it is not enhancing the online world in any way, shape or form. And in regards to the original question, has Lady Lou been gifted the title by the king? Well, one can be forgiven for asking that if one is completely and utterly ignorant of the fact, although one can't really be forgiven for not considering the fact that if it were true, it would be all over the internet. You wouldn't have to search hard to find that news. It would be plastered over every single journal here in the kingdom and beyond, in every channel. That's the first thing to say about it. The second thing to say about it is that it's an impossibility, an absolute impossibility. You don't go about issuing dukedoms all over the place and swapping them among people. It's not a thing that happens. Lady Louise is a Wessex. She's from Wessex blood, and Edinburgh blood, although the Edinburgh title is not hereditary. But, you know, she is from the Wessex side of the family, not Sussex. They're not interchangeable. And aside from a million other reasons why it wouldn't be possible, I also don't think that the Sussex dukedom will ever be recreated again. I think that was its second and final creation when it was gifted by Her Majesty as a wedding gift. And sadly, she's dead and can't ask for a refund. Another public figure that I would like to ask for a refund for is the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, or as I'm going to begin calling him, Sadistic Khan. He is a sadistic little man that has destroyed what remained of London as in his tenureship as Mayor of London. And he strikes me as a sort of Putin figure that's just going to be there forever and ever and ever. This week's adventure has appalled me. It's been making headline news here in the kingdom. The Mayor of London has spent £6.3 million on a new colour scheme and branding for our overground lines. Some of our overground lines here, as part of our tube underground system, you have overline networks that run alongside it, which most of us who are au fait with London are very familiar with, and 6 of them have been given new identities. How harmless, you might think. Well, it is an exercise in wokery and virtue signalling. It is utterly un-British. I will tell you what these 6 new identities are. The first, and bear in mind, usually a line would have a very non-partisan, non-political name. For example, our tube lines are the Northern Line, the Jubilee Line, the Circle Line, the Bank Line, the Victoria Line, you know, some sort of historical naming for kings and queens, this kind of thing, but mainly very basic, or just the names of places. Now, with these 6 new identities, one line is called the Lioness Line, named after the women's football team because of the new female heroes. Then we have the Windrush Line. How many times are we going to have Windrush stuffed down our windpipes? And to be honest, although I'm sure the Windrush was a magnificent ship with, you know, this Caribbean passenger ship with the fantastic legacy, Windrush sound like some gassy case of the squits, some gassy case of diarrhea, you understand? Oh, I've got the Windrushes, my dear. Anyway, now we're going to have the Windrush Line. Then we've got the Suffragette Line, I ask you, named after the 1920s movement for women's suffrage, as you know. Then the Weaver Line. Out of all of them, that sounds like the most harmless to me, and I'm not especially mad at that one, although I still don't think that it's good form. The Weaver Line, named after areas known for textile trade. Then the Liberty Line, celebrating the East London borough of Havering, which historically had more self-governance through being a royal liberty. This was going back hundreds and hundreds of years in history, to the 1400s, I think. And then the Mild May Line somehow is a tribute to an HIV hospital. Ugh. There's nothing wrong with paying tribute to all of these things in many ways, as there are in many platforms, in many circumstances, but something like your travel route, the lines you use every day, needs to have a sense of neutrality. It's like when we talk about banks and post offices, as I've done before, when they're all being invaded by wokery. And my darling John Lewis, which I love, this week I read, are promoting all sorts of trans material to their employees. They've started selling sex toys, and I'm the last person on earth to be a prude, my dear. Do what you like, play with what you like. I don't want sex toys associated with John Lewis. It's part of the historical brand, and shaking it up with these sort of vulgar wokerisms is not going to play out well. I want John Lewis to survive. I enjoy it very much, and it's associated Waitrose shop, but it's making me not want to support it when I see these stories coming up. All I'm asking for is for the world of the public arena, as in the shops we go to, that we're served by, although you wouldn't call it customer service anymore, really, with what's happening. The high street public transport. I don't want a lecture. I don't need their version of education. And reminders about the suffragettes and the Windrushes. It's tawdry, it's cheap, it's vulgar, it's so twee, it's so patronising. This is what it is, patronising. And I can just see some jumped up little 12-year-old piping up now, well, what's wrong with celebrating diversity? Well, I don't think diversity is much to celebrate, to be honest, my dear. There are other things much more worthy of that. But it's called dumbing down. And if you don't get it, little jumped up 12-year-old, then you are dumb and you are the product of a dumbed down society. And it's not all your fault, I'm afraid. Not all your fault. That's the atmosphere you've grown up in. So if you can't get it, it's because you're not able to get it and you're not able to see it. I'm not sure if I remember telling you this, but once I was at one of my favourite, largest vintage and antique fairs. And it's just an absolute paradise from stuff all over the globe, bric-a-brac, antiques, jewellery. Wonderful it is to visit. And I was looking around there. This was going back a while though. I think it was just after the pandemic. And it was after everyone had been instructed in colonialism and the evils of colonialism. And this little girl was with her parents marching around. They're probably at fault, to be honest, for indulging it, but she was only maybe 6 years old, 7 years old. Daddy! She was looking around at all the various ornaments, photography, pictures. There were items that had been obviously shipped in from Africa and India and various continents. Daddy, why is everything in here so colonial? I wish I could remember exactly how she put it, but I had to roll my eyes. And I thought, my darling, you're living in England. You wouldn't be here if we didn't fight for the colonies hundreds of years ago. Yes, a lot of it revolved around slave labour. The empire is responsible for a lot of that, regrettably. It's also responsible for abolishing it. The first empire to do so, as far as I'm aware. You see, there were many empires before ours that also had slaves. There are also slaves right now. Many more than there were during the time of the British Empire. They're just not seen and they're just not heard in the same way. But they exist in vast numbers, on vast continents, in vast regimes. Right now, in factories and being trafficked all over the place. It's not just something from distant history and colonialism, my dear. But it was the distaste that got to me. It was why is everything in here so colonial, Daddy? Or why is it so full of colonial shit? Well, take a few more history lessons, my love. You've obviously brushed up on your vocabulary and your classes on wokedom and wokery. But brush up on a bit of history. Queen Camilla attended a celebration of Shakespeare event, meeting fans of the playwright's work, including stars of the stage and screen, authors, directors and representatives of the National Theatre and Royal Shakespeare Company at Grosvenor House. The lovies were out in force. It was hosted by Gilly Brandreth, who spoke very passionately, I've got to say, about the King and the Queen. Very passionately. It was nice. He said, can I just say on behalf of all of us how wonderful it is to have a King and Queen whose love of literature and the arts is so deep-rooted, so real and so supportive. It's wonderful for us and it's wonderful for the country. Hear, hear. And I couldn't agree more. William and Catherine have got their plates full with all kinds of things, and they're a different generation with different tastes, so I don't expect them to have the same kind of passion and interest that Charles and Camilla have for arts and the literature. But, you know, it is sad to know that that will be, in a way, on the way out, the kind of knowledge that Charles and Camilla have and genuine love of Shakespeare and this kind of thing. You know, it'll filter off with them in those ways. But while we've got them here, cherishing and appreciating those wonderful elements of society, we've really got to cherish and relish it. That's one reason, just one reason to want them around for a decent amount of time. But as well as Giles, there was Jeremy Irons, and I noticed a very intimate little smooch there between he and the Queen. Oh, kissy kissy. And darling Penelope Keith, Margot Ledbetter. Oh, one of my favourite characters of all time, my dear. Sometimes I do channel her on the broadcast. Jenny, Eugenie, I do channel her. If you're in the kingdom, you'll probably know about The Good Life, the series from the 1970s, I think. Yeah, 1975 to 1978. If you're abroad, you might know, because it was shown abroad. In America, it was shown under the name The Good Neighbours, because you already had a sitcom called The Good Life. But Good Neighbours or Good Life, the most exquisite series. I mean, perhaps it might come across as rather dated now to those of you who might look it up. I did look it up. It is on YouTube. I could see the full series. I don't know if you can where you are, but it is there if you want to watch it. Sadly, I think there's 4 series in total. Sadly, the vision is not great on these. It's a very low quality delivery, I'm afraid, on YouTube, so it's not as joyous to watch, although the sound's all there and you can hear the jokes. Not as joyous to watch, but it is available on DVD if you wanted to track it down. Just something, if you haven't seen, I'd highly recommend. Just a fabulous old school British sitcom, beautifully well written and played out. And Penelope, what's her name, Penny Keith as Margot, just one of the most classic characters ever. Zandra Rhodes I spotted, Vanessa Redgrave and Dame Judi Dench. There was Gary Oldman, there was Baroness Floella Benjamin and Dame Twiggy, and the Queen's sister, Annabel Elliot. And the Queen received a Valentine's gift of one of Giles's famous jumpers with a love heart, and there was also one for the King. She wore a blue topaz pendant, her ruby birthstone pendant, and her crushed velvet gown in ultra green, and she was adorned with her Van Cleef & Arpels bangle and earrings. The Queen also celebrated 100 years since the founding of the Poppy factory by hosting a gathering at Clarence House with veterans, families and employees. She cut a cake, another cake with a big sword, and viewed a small exhibition of poppies and wreaths through the years, celebrating the scenery of the Poppy factory in the aftermath of the First World War. She met those whose lives have been changed by civilian employment with help from the Poppy Foundation. Side note, I'm just popping in after filming to say that I noticed my pocket square sank and was lost during the broadcast. I was quite proud of that pocket square. That'll teach me for getting all exercised and contorting about, won't it, my dears? Honestly. I have to rearrange it and keep an eye on it next time. And the Princess Royal visited volunteers on the cliff top at the National Coastwatch station at the Hengistbury Head in Dorset. As Royal Patron of National Coastwatch, Her Royal Highness celebrated the charity's 30th anniversary of helping to save lives around the coast. She's Royal Patron of the National Coastwatch Institution, which is a charity that's run entirely by volunteers saving lives around the coast for 30 years. And there was a reception at a church hall of St Nicholas, attended by 50 watchkeepers from the region. We thank you for your service, dear volunteers. You are what make this world go round and what keep this nation strong. Thank you very much. I hope you had a cosy time with our dear Annie Royal. Thank you for sharing a cosy time with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. Leave me a lovely comment, and my tip jar, if you fancy treating me, is in the description box. Ta-ra for now, and toodle pip.